96% of businesses in the UK never reach £1 million in turnover. But here's the thing, it's not because they're not working hard, it's because they don't have a plan. In this video, I'm going to give you the £1 million blueprint. It's 9 steps that can take any average, messy, stressful business and turn it into a 7-figure machine. My name's Nigel Bottrell. Over the last 15 years, I've built from scratch 10 separate £1 million plus businesses in the UK. One of those businesses is Entrepreneur Circle. It's the UK's largest business growth organisation, and we have helped thousands of business owners to scale past 7 figures. So come with me in this video, let me show you how it's done. Before we get into the blueprint though, I need to talk through why so many business owners never actually make it. And the answer can be found, strangely enough, in this pyramid. And I want you to think about this pyramid as representing any and every market that is out there. It could be all florists in the UK, or it could be all businesses in Bristol. It doesn't matter what the market is. What I'm about to share with you on here applies everywhere. Because what you'll find in every market is that there's a little group at the top. We'll call them the top 1%. And the top 1% are the guys and gals that are absolutely kicking it. They are rich, they are super successful, no question whatsoever. And just underneath them, you know, this may not be completely to scale here, but you've got 4% who are doing great. All right, they're absolutely on the way to great success, typically making tremendous progress. Underneath them, you've got what broadly works out in the round as 15% of the market that are progressing and doing well. Then it gets really interesting, because what you find in pretty much every market is you've got something like 60% of business owners in the middle who are getting by. They're not living the wildest time of their lives, but they are absolutely getting by. They're managing to meet payroll. Their VAT payments all happen on time each quarter. Sometimes it's a struggle, but they kind of get there. That's the point. They get by. And then at the bottom of this pyramid, you've got 20% of business owners at any one time who are absolutely stony broke. Once you accept the breakdown in that pyramid, it leads you to an inescapable and unavoidable conclusion. Because what it tells you is that the majority of business owners in every market are wrong about everything. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Because really, I've taken far too long on this build-up. Let's get stuck in. These steps are all linked, just to be clear. And as you'll see when we go through them, you kind of have to do them in order. If you skip 1 or 2 steps, you will come unstuck further on in the process. Hope that makes sense. If it does, let's dive in to step number 1. So we're going to step 1, and the way I want you to think about these 9 steps is they work like this. So this is step 1 here, and that's step 2, and that's step 3. And we're going to go along this bottom row here, and this bottom row we're going to call the foundation level, because it's about putting in the right foundations. And you will know, you might not like it, but you will know that anything that's worth building and that's going to hang around for any length of time has to have solid foundations. So if you skip these 3 steps, what you risk doing is building a business that is metaphorically built on sand. So we've got to do these 3 steps here, and then we'll go into steps 4 and 5 and step 6, and these are in the middle, and we'll flow through this way through these levels, and then they're in, and then the next, which I'll explain when we get there, and then guess what, we go to the top and we'll do steps 7, 8 and 9. But that's how it's going to build in that shape as we move through these things. And step 1 of the 9 steps is called your life plan. Don't roll your eyes at me like that, all right? I know I am a very pragmatic Yorkshireman. There's nothing woo-woo about this here at all. This bit really matters. This is about understanding what your business needs to do for you and the people that matter to you as far as shaping and providing for the things that you want to do with your life. All right, so when I started my business, I'm not going to pretend otherwise, everything was about me being able to maintain and build the lifestyle that I wanted for my wife Sue and our 4 children. There was a real catalyst for me that actually triggered me to move out of corporate life, because I had a pretty successful corporate career. My last job, which is a long time ago now, well over 20 years ago, my last job, I was somebody's employed managing director. I knew about building business, I knew about marketing, I had a great education in the corporate sector, but I had that itch that all entrepreneurs have. I absolutely wanted to have my own train set, to do my own thing. And so I was in my mid-30s when I took the step and stepped off the corporate ladder and branched out on my own and took on board that responsibility to provide for the people that mattered to me. And the catalyst that made it happen was a tour around the local private school in Solihull. I never went to private school. I went to a comprehensive school in Leeds. I had no experience with private schools, but long story short, we went for a tour on this school that was very near to the house that we lived in, and I was absolutely blown away. And that afternoon visit to that school in many ways changed my life, because I realised that if I stayed employed, I would not be able to put my kids through that school. And there had to be another way if I was going to make that happen, and I had to set up my own business. And that was the catalyst for me to do it, because I was very driven to put my kids through that particular school. I tell you that story just to understand that that was my driver. I had that point in my life. I mean, they've all been through the school and left the school now. We're over 20 years further on. But that was a really important part of my life plan. So we've got to define what matters to us. And when we're defining our life plan, we have a little mnemonic that will help you, hopefully, to do it properly. And we call it establishing your terms. Okay, so, and I would really encourage you to spend some time, and you won't be able to do this quickly, it'll need a bit of thought, maybe 2 or 3 sleeps to reflect on this, but you're going to want to work through how much time are you prepared to commit to your business. And in the very beginning, in that first few years when my business was very embryonic, my answer to that question was whatever it takes. I absolutely was prepared to put everything in to building my business. It was so critically important to me at that point in my life. It's a little bit different now. My business, we work a 4-day week here at Entrepreneur Circle. Our head office is in the Midlands, and all my staff work a 4-day week. I love coming into the office on a Friday morning. I'm the only person that's there, but I'm always off. You'll find me on the golf course around about noon or 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, because that's when my weekend starts, and I'll have a game of golf on the Friday afternoon, and I've got the Saturday and the Sunday completely free, and I don't work at weekends, but I did once upon a time. My terms changed, but I got very clear and I'm very thought through in the amount of time that I'm prepared to commit to the business. The E stands for energy, and this is all about you understanding the things that excite you, the things that you get a kick out of, the things that you enjoy doing, the things that you fulfill you. Because what I've discovered over the years is that the more of that stuff we do, the easier it is to build a business. And when our working day gets burdened with lots of the other stuff that doesn't energize us, then actually life becomes a bit tricky and it becomes a lot harder to build a business. So you starting to get clear on the things that actually feed your energy and fulfill you, and focusing on doing more of them and getting other people delegating the other stuff makes a really, really big difference. The R stands for resources, and this is where you get clear around what it is you want to put into the business. We had some lovely offices that served us well for 10 years. And for many of those 10 years, I'd say, well, and resources-wise, we're not moving office. We're going to stay here. This will fulfill us. But a number of things happened, and my terms changed. And it's okay to change your terms, but as long as you're clear and thought through, and getting clear on the things that you're putting into the business, the constraints that you're putting around it, and getting clear of them is the R. The M stands for money. This is very important. 2 parts to money. Money now. So what do you need to draw from the business to fund your lifestyle this year? So to pay all the bills, to do all the things that you want to do, to travel where you want to travel, to drive the car you want to drive, to whatever it is that is important to you is money now. But any sensible entrepreneur, especially a professional business owner, will also be aware of their money future. So that's about putting money into the right places, whether that's an investment account, whether it's filling up your pension or whatever it might be. Maybe it's some of our members want building portfolios of properties, for instance. But whatever it is, it's about recognizing that the business has to to throw off enough money to both cover the money now and the money future. And then the final figure on the terms is your sanity, or as I prefer to call it, your sleep. So this is about you being sufficiently self-aware to understand what it is that causes you, stress, what keeps you sane, what does the business have to do. One of these, for example, here, a lot of people, I've got people who have got a pathological aversion to ever employing anyone ever because it affects their sanity, because they really don't like it. I'm the exact opposite, by the way, because I would find it incredibly difficult to work on my own. I am fueled by my team every day. Very important for my sanity that I have people alongside me, people who I can feed off, who I can help energize them, they can fuel me, and everyone's different. It's about understanding, well, these are the elements, these fundamentals that are quite important. And out of them comes your life plan. Not just the amount of money that needs to be pulling out the business, but the things you want to be doing. Where do you want to live? Where do you want to travel? All the big stuff. How long are you going to do this for? It all comes out of shaping your terms. And once we start to understand that, we can then start to build the business that actually is genuinely fulfilling for you. Step 2, this is going to be a challenge for some people. We're going to start talking about your numbers. When we get into step 2, and it's interesting because I had to bring a fully qualified accountant into our team at Entrepreneur Circle to work specifically with our members going through these 9 steps. Because we had to help them get clarity. You can't become a professional business person. You cannot move up that pyramid, and you cannot really exploit the 9 steps and get your business to 7 figures consistently unless or until you understand your numbers. So it starts with properly understanding your P&L, the levers that are moving that. What's driving what does the revenue need to be at? What should your expenses be at? And in particular, your margins that are so important, especially understanding your gross margin, because that's actually what drives the profitability and the growth in your business. And we have 7 key numbers that really matter above all others. There are other numbers that are significant and that matter from time to time, but in any business that becomes sustainably successful, these 7 key numbers are absolutely critical. Unusually, I'm going to write these from the bottom up, okay? So number 1 at the bottom is your net profit, all right? That's the money that's left over, genuinely left over for you after everything else is taken care of. What you've then got to understand is what we call your operating expenses. This is your overheads, potentially lots of your salaries would go in there as well. And then number 3 is your COGS, or your cost of goods sold, your cost of sales. So what it actually costs you to produce whatever it is that you sell. But once you understand that, we start to get clear on revenue. And I'm doing this in reverse order, by the way, because they all flow together, as I'll explain in a moment. Our revenue comes, of course, from, this is where it might get a bit interesting, from our average order value. And I know in lots of businesses, you have huge variation there. You have some people that spend a little bit of money and some people spend a lot of money. But there's always an average, because we can look at, well, how much money did we take in altogether and how many customers were involved? And we can divide the big number by the little number and we get an average order value. And every business has an average order value, and it is your responsibility as the business owner to understand what that average order value is. Once I know my average order value, I know exactly how many customers I need to generate the revenue that I need. And that revenue, of course, then is massively impacted by arguably the most important number in any business if we want to build it and make it sustainably successful and push it into 7 figures. We've got to understand and live by our gross margin. Your gross margin is a magical number, and you'd want to know what it is both in terms of a percentage of your turnover and also in terms of a pounds and pence number, what it means per product sold, how much of that actually is available to you to cover your operating expenses and your profit. Now, we'll do another video another time that will drill into these 7 numbers in quite a lot of detail, because once you understand them, they become the financial metrics that absolutely would dictate and drive your success. And if at the moment you're thinking, well, it's all very well, but I don't really understand that, Nige, I understand that fully. it means you're probably sat somewhere in the middle of the pyramid, but it means that actually without a great deal of to do, if we can get clarity around this and you start to understand the numbers, it becomes way easier when you understand the game to make progress through the game and get up that pyramid. So massive opportunity for you if this is not somewhere that you spent time currently, if it's an area that you're instinctively uncomfortable with, that's a massive opportunity for you. And what we do, we take these 7 numbers and we map out where the business is now. And what we can then do is then map out where the business needs to be to deliver those terms that you identified in step 1. Because not least we've got the money now, money future, we add all those together, we look at, well, what does the business have to do to deliver that money? And it's not just about the business profit, it's where that profit comes from. Because, okay, well, the business comes from that, I need that much for my operating expenses, that's my cost of goods sold, so my revenue needs to be up here, which means I need this many customers at an average value of this. So, and people, that's often a really massive, oh my God, I'm only 100 customers away from living my ideal life. Erroneously, lots of people think that to double the business, to double the profits in a business, you have to double the size of the business. It isn't true. The truth is that getting the profit up becomes really straightforward once you get beyond break even. Because once you're covering all your operating expenses, your entire gross margin flows down to your net profit. And actually we start to get really big leverage. And again, if I'm covering things that are a little bit confusing for you right now, I'm sorry, but I am giving you a little insight and a little glimpse into how professional business owners think and to how life is and what life's all about at the top end of that pyramid. Because as I said, business is a numbers game, and the professional business owners, the people at the top of the pyramid, they play that numbers game, and you can too, provided you get to grips with step 2. It's all about your numbers. Let me tell you about Kim. Because Kim's very well known now. Remember, I've changed the name. Kim actually is quite a high profile guy. And Kim was very much a solopreneur. He was running very high revenue coaching events around the world, but he was drowning in work. His wife was expecting their first child. He knew he needed help, but he didn't know how on earth he could afford the staff to actually help him. And his turning point was when we sat down and helped him use the 7 key numbers to start to properly understand the revenue that he needed, the cost that he could spend, and what that would give him in terms of his hiring needs. And what he calculated was that if he ran 4 of this particular masterclass event that he ran, 4 a year with 20 people at each of those events, and he sold them at 15 grand, and we knew how to do that, then actually he could afford to hire 2 coaches to help him to fulfill that. And it all came from understanding the numbers. And once he understood the numbers and he had that clarity, that gave him the confidence to scale. And for Kim in particular, this was massively life-changing, because he was nothing like as well known then as he is now. And his wife subsequently was able to leave her full-time job. She could, she looked after the baby and the kids as they grew up. She then subsequently came into the business, and they had this work-life balance that they all wanted. But it all started with him getting clarity on the numbers and for getting step 2 properly sorted. Now, step 3, we call it your path. So you've got your life plan at step 1, we've got the numbers at step 2, and it's the final step on that foundation layer, remember, is your path. You could call it your strategy if you like. And what we do in step 3 is we start to map out what we call your business model canvas. We start to create a picture, literally a picture, sits on a single piece of paper, and we define how your business creates, what it does, how you operate, how you deliver to your customers, how you provide value. And we look at and understand the most effective way for your business to deliver the target numbers that we identified in step 2, and those numbers are needed to deliver the life plan that you mapped out in step 1. So this is what we're taking. Okay, this is where we are now. This is where we want to be. This is the path that we're going to take to get there. So this is what we're going to do. This is what we need to do more of. This is what we're going to do less of. So this obviously is different for every business. There's a lot of subjectivity around here, but we get clear on if we do these things in these time scales, that will deliver these numbers that we mapped out earlier on. So this is about developing your financial plan as well. It's about aligning your cash flow, your pricing, big opportunities on pricing for a lot of people. When a guy came into step 3, and he has a very large number of customers who only paid him a fairly small amount of money. It was a subscription business, so a very healthy business in that regard. But when he did his whole life plan and then did his numbers, He was only about 120 grand of turnover away from where he wanted to be, relatively modest number. And we were able to achieve it literally in a single afternoon. And because what we actually did is tweak his pricing, and not by a huge amount either, but by tweaking his pricing and deploying that across his very large customer base, all of a sudden his extra 120 grand, 10 grand a month suddenly was starting to come in, and he was able to move to exactly where he identified. That was the quickest anyone has ever gone from taking these 9 steps from step 1 all the way, because we got there, made a massive leap forward in step 3 with identifying the path and developing his financial plan, which is about your cash flow, your pricing, the revenue streams, and driving that long-term growth. The little story here is quite an important one. It's a lady I want to tell you about here. I've called her Freya in this example. Again, as I said, it's not her real name. But Freya had a business that she'd been running for over 10 years. But she really felt quite trapped. And in truth, if she's honest about it, what actually happened is, although she'd been in business for 10 years, what she'd really done is have the same year 10 times over. And that's a little pattern that lots of businesses, if you're honest about it, will be able to relate to. Things actually didn't change all that much. She'd got in a little bit of a rut, and her revenue was kind of fairly static at like just over 20 grand a month revenue into the business. She felt constantly overworked, and she was lacking any kind of clear direction. And she came into this blueprint, and we went through step 1, we went through step 2, and we got to step 3, and we were able to help her to see exactly where this business should go and what needed to happen. 10 years to get to 20 grand a month. In 12 months from getting through this step 3, she was at 90 grand a month, because we gave her genuine financial clarity and the confidence that she could actually implement her roadmap for growth. And she could step back from the day-to-day operations, that fantastic place when you've got your team actually running the day-to-day without you. And her business now is absolutely busting, way beyond £2 million of turnover. You know, she's exploring expansion. She's about to do her first acquisition. So things dramatically different. And the real kicking turning point for her was this step 3, when she got clear on her path. But she could only get to step 3 because she'd gone through step 2 and step 1 very diligently and very thoroughly, and understood what step 3 had to do for her. So we've done step 1, your life plan. We've talked about step 2, the importance of understanding your numbers, and then step 3 is your path. And this whole layer, remember I call this the foundation level at the bottom. That's what those first 3 steps are all about. But now we're ready to go into what we call the execution level. And that's where the next 3 steps are going to be focused on. Step 4, step 5, and step 6. Let's have a look at step 4. And again, we've touched on this already earlier with what step 4 is all about. And this is about your team. This is about you setting your business up to not just deliver on the path, but deliver it in a way that starts to liberate you from the day-to-day in your business. And it does start in step 4. What we get you to do is to clarify really clearly, you know, your mission and your vision, you know, what matters to you, what are the values in your business, and what's your purpose? Why does your business exist? How do you put a little dent in the universe and make the world a better place? And that's really important when it comes to building a great team. So many business owners, and I use the term very deliberately as business owners as opposed to entrepreneurs, so many people languishing in the bottom half of that pyramid don't give any thought to these sorts of things. They haven't got clarity of vision. They've never bothered to write down their values. They don't understand what the purpose actually is. And this stuff matters when you're building a team to help you deliver it, because people really like it when they've got clarity of leadership, when they've got something to believe in, when they've got a real sense of purpose, and this is what we're here, when there's somebody that believes in them as well. That can be hugely helpful. And if as a leader, you know, they can believe in you, now we're starting to really get this thing rock and rolling. And so getting this bit right is essential to building the right team and putting the right people in place. As I said earlier, these are not necessarily employees. Some of these people might work for you on an outsourced basis, but they're still part of your team that is delivering for your customers. And we get to design then the roles that you need to deliver a business of the scale that is needed to hit those numbers that will enable you to live that life plan. See how all those steps are all connected. So once you've got all those elements clear, you can roll them out to your team And that is hugely helpful in creating an environment where your team understands, what they've got to do, why they're doing it, and you get people that actually give a shit, people that have got the gas factor. And when you're surrounded by people that start to care almost as much as you do about your customers and the success of your business, then things really start to happen and to move very, very quickly. And one of the values in our business is written large. It's in kind of 18-inch high letters on the wall in our office. I'll put a little picture up here so you can see it. And I tell people it's just 11. You need to know 11 words that tell you all you need to know to be a success in our business. And you can see it on the screen now that you've got to do great work, not do okay work, not do enough work to get by, not do average work, do fucking great work. Okay, the words are chosen really carefully. Do great work. That middle bit, give a shit. We call it the gas factor. So do great work, give a shit, and don't be an arsehole. And honestly, you'll flourish and thrive in my business if you follow those 11 words. And in many ways, they'll apply to lots of businesses. And look, if you want to swipe them and deploy them, I honestly don't care. What I can tell you is that they've worked really, really well for me. And, one of the things I'm very blessed with and very grateful for and very fortunate to have is a team that really can and do drive this business forward. And they fuel me and they energize me and they look after my customers almost as well as I'd look after them myself. They absolutely do give a shit about the customers. They are able to run the business when I'm not here, and it's because we got clear on what these values are. And it self-polices when you get it all working properly. So it's really, really important is step 4. Moving into the middle of that execution layer, step 5, this is in many ways like the sexy part of the blueprint, and it's where lots of people kind of naturally gravitate to. But if you get to step 5 without properly doing steps 1, 2, 3, and 4, you will at some point come unstuck, because step 5 is all about the rhythmic acquisition of customers. And we choose those words very carefully. They're very important words to us at Entrepreneur Circle. We built them into the blueprint, baked them in here. The rhythmic acquisition of customers. So you're getting that rhythm coming through your business, whatever your rhythm is, 3 customers a year or the 160 customers a day, and you're somewhere between those two extremes. So what we do is we get clear on who you really want as a customer. A lot of business owners never pause to think about this. But the truth is, you don't have to just take anybody that comes along. You can, by the decisions you take and the actions that things that you do, you can determine who you actually do business with. So we get clear, well, who do you really want? Who are your best customers? And we start to look at that and define them and segment them based on not just what they want and their needs, but how they behave and the things that they do, so we can start to target them properly. We then start to map out the customer prospect journey. We map out how leads move from being aware of you to becoming customers and converting and paying you money. And we make the thing really smooth and seamless. We follow up properly. Oh my God, follow-up's like a magic pill when it comes to rhythmic acquisition, because pretty much every business in the bottom 60 and the 20, the 80% of the pyramid, pretty much everybody in the 60 and the 20 fucks up the follow-up. We get the follow-up sorted, we get that prospect journey properly mapped out, and then we set a scorecard, the right scorecard that tracks the right metrics. So we start tracking the input metrics, like your marketing spend, because if you don't spend the money, you won't get the leads. If you don't get the leads, you won't get the demos or the meetings or the appointments. If you don't get the demos or the meetings or the appointments, you can't get the conversion that you need. Now you track your conversion rates, and the customers, we look at average order value, we start to track and measure these things, because business is a numbers game. And once we get clarity on the key numbers around this rhythmic acquisition of customers and we start to focus on them, well, you'll never believe it, honestly. When you start to focus on numbers, the numbers start to get better. And genuinely, in lots of instances, it's not any more complicated than that. There's a guy called Don, and Don and his family, because this is very much a family business, had been running a business for over 20 years. And they had used every marketing trick in the book. They were good at Google and Facebook, and had lots of landing pages. They'd done direct mail, but they were really struggling to maintain consistent rhythmic customer acquisition. And they realized in step 5 that was because their approach was it was very scattered, it was very piecemeal, it was very ad hoc, it was very inefficient. They hadn't put in place marketing assets that were running repeatedly and regularly and automatically. And so they started to define their customer, their ideal customer, their avatar. They built their customer journey and mapped it all back, and they put that scorecard system in place. And within 2 months, Within 2 months, so quickly, 8 weeks, they had slashed their lead generation cost by almost a third. It was over 30% down. And their numbers of new customers went up by 25%. So they spent 30% less, we're getting 25% more because they were focused on the right things. And their business now has completely predictable inflow of leads and customers. Their customer acquisition is highly profitable. And rather than them constantly chasing new leads or getting in this kind of classic famine to feast mode that so many businesses operate in, they've now got that rhythmic acquisition coming in, and it changes everything in a business. When you crack rhythmic acquisition, everything is different. Step 6, our final step on the execution layer, is what we call delivering excellence. And when it comes to delivering excellence, one of the first things we do is we map out our customer journey. And we use a little device that involves lots of post-it notes and large pieces of paper, but we literally start to map out the customer journey, the key touch points that your customer is going to experience that you want. So we design what we actually want to happen. Often we'll involve members of the team in doing this. We'll start to look very carefully at how this works. And what we're doing here, what you're seeing, is a customer journey that represents and properly fulfills this little mnemonic here. And this little mnemonic here is metaphorically every single customer that you ever come across in your business or that your staff ever come across, every single customer has got those 5 letters stamped across their forehead. Now I know they're not there really, but I tell you, they're absolutely there, because PMMFS stands for Please Make Me Feel Special. And that's all most people in almost every business, that's all they really want, your customers. If you can make your customers feel special, your business will flourish and thrive, and you will have a very, very successful and fulfilling life. The problem is that most people don't do the thinking to understand what it will take to make people feel special. And by mapping out your customer journey properly and giving it a depth of thought that most people in your industry have never done, because they're all too busy being busy. They're not being productive and effective. They're not thinking about the right sort of things. When you do, you start to float up the pyramid. And the professional business owners absolutely manifest and live and breathe this sort of thing. And once we've done it, we test it on your last 5 customers, and we evaluate their experience from start to finish, and then you sign it off, and then you start to drive it and implement it into your business. And when you get a really well thought through customer journey, what happens is not only do your customers love it, but your staff love it too. They are energized and motivated and fueled by making people feel great. And a lot of this stuff, it costs no money. All it requires is a couple of brain cells and a little bit of thought. And that's why step 6 is such an important one in our model. The little story on step 6 is about Katie. And Katie, well, she was an absolute force of nature, was Katie. And she had several 7-figure businesses. So they were all quite big operations that Katie had, but she felt like she was losing control, and her revenue had started to dip. It was declining. She was having some problems with customer satisfaction, and she was really feeling massive pressure because it was her dad that had started this business, and she really wanted to live up to her father's legacy, and it was causing a lot of stress that she was struggling to do so. And what became apparent when we started to talk with Katie and get into this is that each of her departments in the business were working in silos, and each department was focused on the things that mattered to them, but there was no one in truth was looking at the customer experience in its totality. And by focusing on a piece of work that aligned that customer journey, that involved everyone in the different silos on mapping out from sale to delivery and making sure each department worked together towards the same end goal, it made a huge, huge difference. She tweaked her pricing and she put the right checks and balances in place, because some of her customers were getting massively over-delivered and others were getting undercharged, but it made a huge, huge difference. Her revenue came back up, her customer satisfaction soared, and the business now all of a sudden was way more profitable. And by improving that efficiency, it was approaching £500,000 in additional profit to her business, whilst actually looking after less customers. And it all came from that customer journey and understanding that properly. So this makes a really, really big difference. And if we go back to our 9 steps, we're now moving into step 7, and we're up onto this top level. And this This for me, this is the real fun bit. But you can't do this bit until you've done the first 6 steps. But we get into the optimization level in steps 7, 8, and 9. And step 7 is when we start to look properly at your day-to-day. So what are you actually doing in your business on a day-to-day basis? And what we do is focus on getting everything and everybody aligned. So we start to set really clear objectives and expectations for your team. We put alerts in place using our scorecard system, so you're able to track the key metrics. And then if you're tracking them, it means you can catch any issues and fix them before they escalate and become a big deal. And then you also start then to learn lessons in what is a perpetual kind of feedback loop, where you're able to regularly review what's happening and refine the processes. So this is when we start to take you properly out of day-to-day delivery in any shape or form. So you move from being someone working in the business to someone whose only role is to work on the business. I had a customer called Paul. He had a big insurance business, and he'd implemented all the first 6 steps. But he still really struggled psychologically, because he'd spent like 25 years in his business. He really struggled to step away. He couldn't help checking his emails every 20 minutes on his phone. He genuinely was, there's always something, because there is, as a business owner, there's always something we can go get stuck into, isn't there? And he was frightened that the business would kind of collapse without him. Things would never be quite the same. But he put in these regular meetings on a Monday in his case, that focused on performance, that ensured that there was clarity across the organisation. He deployed his scorecard that measured both the financial and the operational numbers, all on a single sheet of paper. And once you've got the scorecard and you've got people in the business, not you, responsible for each measure on the scorecard, then his team was able to proactively address the issues. And as a consequence, Paul started to travel with his wife, and he took his first proper holiday. He went away for 3 weeks. He hadn't had a proper holiday for many, many years. And his wife noticed the change just immediately. It was really transformational for the two of them, because by removing himself from the daily operations, he was able to do the things that he wanted to do. He got involved in a couple of joint ventures, and he's now negotiating, as I'm doing this now, what will hopefully be an 8-figure exit from his business. And it's 8 figures because the business runs without him. Because you try and sell any business where you're still a key part of it, and you'll find that the number that you're able to talk about will be significantly diminished. And in that regard, this step 7 matters hugely, because once we've got your day-to-day fixed, we can move into step 8. This is where the fun really starts, and we call step 8 leveraging your business. And what we do here is we start to understand where the leaks are, and we call it your leaky bucket. Often this is in the marketing funnel, where are people dropping off and not moving through and converting and becoming customers. We then start to design the levers and the interventions that will stop the leaks, so we're able to put in place targeted improvements in the right areas. We can fix pricing, we can fix follow-up. As I mentioned earlier on, we can look at conversion and start to tackle that if necessary. And also in some businesses, customer retention is really important, and getting people to buy more frequently and more often. And we start to prioritize those levers, because we've fixed your day-to-day and you're out the day-to-day running in step 7. It liberates you in step 8. And step 8 is like a never-ending, the truth of it is, you can just keep going round step 8. Step 8 is almost like never finished, because there's always stuff to leverage. The core levers in most businesses flow around leads, both quantity and quality, conversations, whether that's on the telephone, on Zoom calls, sometimes in person in your shop or your outlet, appointments might come into there, customer numbers, the inflow, tweaking and changing those things that we got it rhythmic in step 5, but maybe the rhythm could be honed a little bit. Average order value is a really good one. Big opportunity to boost profits by pushing up, nudging up just a little bit the average order value. Most of that money will flow to the bottom line. It's what professional business owners do. Repeat purchases, as I mentioned, accelerating that cycle of repeat buys makes a massive difference to profitability. And then the other key core lever is margins, improving your buying better, in particular, elimination of surplus cost. The best example here was a brother and sister, Max and Melissa. They were the second generation owners of an optician's. They had a requirement to generate an extra £250,000 in surplus cash within 12 months of coming to us. And they had to have that cash because it was the final payment that they had to make to their respective parents who'd started the business, so that ownership would be fully and finally passed down a generation. They already had 3 branches. Oh, go and open new branches, that's how you'll get the money. But they were worried that the expansion would actually drain their cash flow in the short term rather than solve their problem. And what we did is we mapped out their business, and we were able to see really quite quickly and quite easily there were a couple of very significant inefficiencies, and inefficiencies in particular in the appointment scheduling. Obviously everything in opticians, or most revenue, derives from the eye test. And they had optometrists who were only working reduced hours, and there was no one else in the eye test room in out of those hours. And by expanding their capacity and focusing on filling the appointments in each location, it absolutely transformed this business. And they went from doing, across their 3 sites, something like 70 or 80 eye tests a week to doing like 140 eye tests a week. And within a year, they generate not 250 grand of surplus cash, but almost £500,000 of surplus cash. They paid off not just their parents, but all the debt in the business. And now those guys are taking 7-figure dividends. They've gone from a business that was around the £2.5 million mark to one that is now over twice that size. They describe it, we were running on a hamster wheel, and now it's like a flywheel, because they've got this consistent momentum for future growth. And having fixed those efficiencies, interestingly, what Max and Melissa are now doing is they are now acquiring other optician stores in different parts of the country and putting their model into those stores and growing massively. But it all came from step 8, leveraging and fixing those opportunities. And then step 9, the final step in the blueprint, is we call it Don't Work Fridays. And it's not actually about not working Fridays if you don't want to, but it's about you deciding what you want to do with your future. Step 9 is all about your choices and you doing what you want to do. You get to decide your future plan when you get to step 9, because the business runs independently without you. You're not required on a day-to-day basis. You've done the things to optimize. You can go and spend time and keep going down that optimization route if you want to do so. You can start to expand by acquiring other sites and other businesses and taking your model into them. You can exit it if you want to. You can go and travel the world. We had one person came through this blueprint and has gone off on a 14-week cruise. You get to choose is the important point in step 9. You can, create a structured plan that transitions you away from the business, that gives you those choices, or you can stay in it if you want to do so. Either way, in step 9, your business is ready for exit if you want to exit. It's ready to scale if you want to take it on to the next level. You've put yourself in an amazing place. Mike is probably one of our best examples here. He had quite a sizable 7-figure media business based in London. He had a great team, but he was stuck when we first met him working 5 days a week in the business. And Mike's husband was American, and Mike's husband could not get a UK visa. And so Mike had to travel to Colorado. He went as often as he could. He was going like every month, but it wasn't half straining his time and his finances. And so he came in and looked at step 1, and part of his life plan was to look at, well, what would the business need to do for him to get control over the time? And we could map that into step 2, which is what we did, and he put the team in place, and we started to build this business through to ensure that his leadership team could run the business without him. And what it meant is that 15 months after he started, Mike was able to leave the daily operations, and he moved to America to be with his husband, and his business continues to thrive in the UK, and he comes back once a quarter, which is what he's now able to do. So he's got complete location freedom. His business operates like a kind of well-oiled machine. He's got his scorecard. He does jump on Zoom on a Monday morning to check in with his management team, but he's got the life that he always kind of desired and dreamed for, and it was the blueprint that made it happen. So what now? Firstly, be honest with yourself. Are you running your business, or is your business running you? So many business owners operate on hope rather than strategy, constantly reacting to problems instead of executing that structured plan. Second point is, got to identify your weak spots. Which of those 9 steps are you stuck on? Have you clearly defined your life plan? Step 1. Without knowing where you want to go, every decision, frankly, is just guesswork. So the way forward now, surely, is to start implementing one step at a time. This isn't theory, it's all a proven system. It works, providing you take action. Ideas do not make you rich. It's the implementation and the execution that brings in the money and creates that future that you aspire to. And if you want help implementing the 9-step plan into your business, then if you click the link in the description below, you can download a whole bunch of free resources and templates and tools that I've put together that will help you to get started. Of course, here at Entrepreneur Circle, helping businesses to grow is quite literally our job. It's what we do. So if you do want some more personal, hands-on help, you can book a bespoke strategy call with my team. They'll talk through, understand your situation and help you to get started and identify some quick wins so you can see progress pretty fast. Just click the link in the description, start implementing. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.